The morning alarm rang through the metal halls of Nexus Prime Station. Kim Tae-ho rolled out of his narrow bed and looked out the small window. Stars filled the darkness of space around the massive station that floated between 3 planets. He had been here for 6 months now, but the view still amazed him. Tae-ho was the only human student at the Galactic Defense Academy this year. Most aliens found humans strange. They said humans were too soft and too emotional for real military work. But here he was anyway, trying to prove them wrong. He put on his gray academy uniform and walked to the dining hall. The corridor was full of different species heading to breakfast. Tall blue Kalari walked with their long legs, taking huge steps. Short green Vorthons moved in small groups, always talking quietly to each other. The rock-like stonebacks made heavy footsteps that echoed down the hall. In the dining hall, Tae-ho got his food from the machine. It was some kind of protein paste that was supposed to be safe for all species to eat. It tasted like nothing, but it kept him alive. He sat at his usual table near the window. Soon his classmates joined him. Kyle and Nira were twin Vorthons with dark green skin and large black eyes. They were both very smart and loved to solve problems with math and logic. Kale was better at planning attacks, while Nira was better at finding weak spots in enemy defenses. Rin was a Zephyrian with light blue skin and long, thin arms. Her people were known for being very fast and good at scouting. She could run faster than anyone else in their class and climb walls like a spider. She always seemed to be moving, even when sitting still. Thok was a stoneback, which meant he looked like he was made of gray rocks. He was shorter than Tae-ho, but much wider and stronger. His people were famous warriors who could take a lot of damage in battle. Thok spoke slowly and thought carefully before doing anything. "Ready for combat theory today?" Kyle asked while eating his green paste. "Professor Vex said we would do something special," Nira added. "Something about advanced simulation." Tae-ho nodded but felt nervous. Professor Vex was a scary teacher. She was a Kalari who had fought in real wars before coming to teach at the academy. She was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. Her yellow eyes seemed to see everything. She never smiled and always spoke in a cold voice. The other students respected Professor Vex because she had survived battles that killed many good soldiers. But they also feared her because she was very hard on students who made mistakes. Last week, she made a Vorthon student run extra training for 3 hours because he forgot to check his weapon before entering a simulation. After breakfast, they walked to the combat theory classroom. The room had 30 seats facing a large screen at the front. Behind the screen was the simulation chamber where they practiced fighting against computer enemies. Professor Vex stood at the front of the room with her 4 arms crossed. She waited until all students were quiet before speaking. "Today, you will face something different," she said. Her voice was as cold as always. "For 6 months, you have fought simple enemies. Robots that move in straight lines. Computer programs that follow basic attack patterns. Today, you will face a real challenge." The students looked at each other with worry and excitement. Real challenges usually meant someone would get hurt, even in simulation. In the galaxy, there are creatures that have killed entire military units, Professor Vex continued. Predators so dangerous that most species run away when they see them. These creatures are kept in our restricted data files. Today, you will face one of them. Tae-ho felt his heart beat faster. He had read about some of these creatures in the Academy library. Most of them were described as unstoppable killing machines. "The creature you will face today is called a shadow maw," Professor Vex said. "It comes from a planet in the Outer Rim, where 3 military expeditions were completely destroyed. It is 12 feet tall. It has 6 limbs with razor claws. Its skin is harder than most armor. It can see in complete darkness, and its bite can cut through metal." Several students made worried sounds. Even Thok, who was usually brave, looked uncomfortable. "Your mission is simple," Professor Vex said. "Survive for 20 minutes. You may use any tactics you have learned. You may work alone or in groups. The simulation will record everything you do. I will judge your performance based on how long you survive and how well you follow proper military protocol. She pointed to a door that led to the simulation chamber. The environment will be a jungle from the Shadow Maw's home planet. You will have standard academy weapons and equipment. Remember, even though this is a simulation, the safety protocols will make you feel real pain if the creature attacks you. This is to make sure you take the exercise seriously. The student stood up and began moving toward the simulation chamber. Taiho noticed that his hands were shaking a little. He took deep breaths to calm himself. One more thing, Professor Vex said, making everyone stop. This creature is different from anything you have faced before. It does not follow the same patterns as our regular simulation enemies. The computer program for this creature was built using real data from survivors and security recordings. It learns and adapts during the fight. Do not expect it to make the same mistake twice. As they entered the simulation chamber, Taiho thought about what she had said. A creature that learns and adapts. Most of their training had been against enemies that followed simple rules. This would be much harder. The simulation chamber was a large, round room with white walls. When the program started, those walls would show them a different environment. The floor, ceiling, and walls would feel real, even though they were just projections. The students checked their equipment. Each had a basic energy rifle, a sidearm, some supplies, and emergency medical kit. Taiho also had his personal items, including some food rations he always carried. Beginning simulation in 30 seconds, Professor Vex announced from the control room above them. The white walls began to change. Suddenly they were standing in a thick jungle with tall trees, thick vines, and strange plants everywhere. The air felt hot and humid. Sounds of unknown animals came from the darkness between the trees. Somewhere in this jungle was a creature that had killed trained soldiers. The hunt was about to begin. The jungle felt completely real around them. Thick green leaves hung from tall trees that seemed to go up forever. The air was so humid that Taiho's uniform already felt damp against his skin. Strange bird calls and insect sounds came from every direction. The ground was soft and covered with fallen leaves that made quiet sounds under their feet. Kyle immediately pulled out a small device and began scanning the area. Numbers and symbols appeared on its screen as he tried to map their surroundings. Nira knelt down and examined the ground, looking for tracks or signs of danger. "The creature could be anywhere," she whispered to her brother. "We need to find high ground and establish a defensive position." Rin had already climbed halfway up the nearest tree. Her long, thin arms moved quickly from branch to branch. "I can see about 200 meters in each direction," she called down quietly. "Lots of thick jungle. No movement yet." Thok stood, with his back to the group, watching the jungle behind them. His gray, stone-like skin would protect him better than anyone else if they were attacked. He held his energy rifle ready and spoke in his slow, deep voice. "Something is watching us. I can feel it." Taiho looked around the jungle and felt the same thing. There was a strange quiet in the air, like all the small animals had suddenly stopped making noise. That usually meant a big predator was nearby. "Should move," Kale said, still studying his scanner. "Find a place where we can see the creature coming and have room to fight." The group began moving through the jungle. Rin stayed in the trees above them, jumping from branch to branch and watching for danger. The others walked carefully through the thick plants, trying not to make too much noise. They had only been walking for 5 minutes when it happened. A deep growling sound came from somewhere behind them. It was not like any animal sound Taiho had ever heard. It was low and rumbling like a machine, but also wild and angry like a living thing. "Contact!" Rin whispered from above. "Something big is moving through the trees about 50 meters behind us." The growling got louder. Then they heard the sound of breaking branches and heavy footsteps. Whatever was coming was not trying to be quiet anymore. "Defensive positions," Kyle ordered. "Nira, find us some cover. Thok, watch our backs. Rin, keep eyes on the target." But before they could move, the creature appeared. It came crashing through the thick jungle plants like they were made of paper. The Shadow Maw was even more terrifying than Professor Vex had described. It stood 12 feet tall on its back legs, but it could also run on all 6 limbs like a giant insect. Its body was covered in black armor that looked like it was made from polished stone. The armor had strange patterns that glowed with blue and red light. The creature's head was the worst part. It had too many eyes, all different sizes, that moved independently to look in different directions. Its mouth was full of teeth that were each as long as Tai-Ho's fingers. Thick saliva dripped from its jaws and made small hissing sounds when it hit the ground. When the Shadow Maw saw the students, all of its eyes turned to focus on them. The glowing patterns on its armor changed from blue to bright red. It opened its mouth and let out a roar that made the ground shake. Kale and Nira both froze. Even though they were smart and had trained for this, seeing the creature in person was too much. Their minds could not process what they were looking at. Rin fell out of the tree she was climbing. She landed hard but quickly rolled behind a fallen log. Her natural speed was the only thing that saved her from being seen. Thok raised his rifle and began shooting. The energy bolts hit the creature's armor but did not seem to hurt it much. The Shadow Maw turned toward him and began walking forward on its 6 legs. That was when Tai-Ho did something that surprised everyone. Instead of running or fighting, he sat down on the ground. He put his rifle to the side and reached into his pack. While a 12-foot-tall monster walked toward his friend, Tai-Ho calmly opened his emergency food rations. "Tai-Ho, what are you doing?" Nira shouted. "Get up and fight!" But Tai-Ho ignored her. He pulled out a piece of dried meat from his rations and held it in his hand. Then he began making soft clicking sounds with his tongue. The sounds were gentle and rhythmic, like he was trying to calm a scared animal. The Shadow Maw stopped walking toward Thok. Its many eyes all turned to look at the human who was sitting quietly on the ground. The red lights on its armor began to fade. Tai-Ho kept making the clicking sounds. He held the piece of meat out toward the creature but did not stand up or make any fast movements. He kept his body low and his eyes looking down, not directly at the monster. "He has lost his mind," Kyle whispered. "The fear has broken his brain." But Professor Vex, watching from the control room, was not so sure. She had seen many students face their first real predator. Some ran away, some froze in terror, some fought bravely but uselessly. But she had never seen a student try to communicate with the enemy. The Shadow Maw tilted its massive head to one side. The angry red glow on its armor continued to fade, replaced by a soft blue-green color. It took one step toward Tai-Ho, then another. Thok raised his rifle again, ready to shoot if the creature attacked his friend. But Rin grabbed his arm. "Wait," she whispered. "Look at its body language." The creature was no longer moving like a predator hunting prey. Its 6 legs moved more carefully, and its head was held lower. The saliva had stopped dripping from its mouth. Even its breathing seemed calmer. Tai-Ho slowly extended his hand with the piece of meat. He continued making soft clicking sounds and kept his eyes looking down at the ground instead of directly at the creature. The Shadow Maw came closer. Now it was only 10 feet away, then 5 feet. Then it was close enough that Tai-Ho could smell its breath, which was surprisingly not unpleasant. The creature stretched its long neck forward and carefully took the piece of meat from Tai-Ho's hand. Its teeth, which had looked so frightening before, moved very gently to avoid hurting the small human. When it ate the meat, the Shadow Maw made a sound that was completely different from its earlier roar. This sound was low and rumbling, but not angry. It almost sounded like the creature was happy. Tai-Ho smiled and spoke in a quiet voice. "There you are, big guy. You are not so scary after all, are you?" The creature made the happy rumbling sound again and moved its head closer to Tai-Ho. "I think I will call you Buddy," Tai-Ho said, and slowly reached out to touch the creature's armor. In the control room above, Professor Vex stared at her instruments. The simulation was supposed to last 20 minutes of combat. It had been running for 30 minutes now, and no one was fighting at all. The Shadow Maw looked into Taiho's eyes with what seemed like curiosity. The creature's many eyes blinked slowly, one after another, like it was thinking about something very carefully. The glowing patterns on its black armor had completely changed, from angry red to a calm blue-green color. Taiho kept his movements very slow and gentle. He reached into his pack again and pulled out another piece of dried meat. The creature watched his every movement, but did not seem afraid or angry anymore. "Here you go, buddy," Taiho said softly, offering the second piece of food. The Shadow Maw took the meat even more gently than before. When it chewed, it made that same happy rumbling sound. Then it did something that made everyone watching hold: their breath. The creature lowered its massive head and gently touched Taiho's shoulder with its snout. "This is impossible," Kyle whispered to his sister. "That creature is supposed to be a killing machine." Nira was still staring at her scanner. "The readings are all wrong. Its heart rate is slowing down. Its body temperature is dropping. These are signs of a relaxed animal, not an aggressive predator." Rin climbed down from her hiding place behind the log. She moved very carefully, not wanting to startle the creature. "In all my scout training, we learned that predators only calm down when they feel safe. But how can it feel safe around us?" Thok lowered his rifle but kept it ready. "Maybe the human knows something we do." "Not know." In the control room, Professor Vex was having the same thoughts. She had spent years studying military tactics and predator behavior. Everything she knew told her that this situation was impossible. The Shadow Maw should have attacked immediately. It should have seen the students as either threats to fight or prey to hunt. But the creature was acting like neither a hunter nor a fighter. It was acting like something else entirely. Professor Vex looked at her computer screens. The simulation program was designed to run the creature through different behavior patterns based on what happened in the exercise. Aggressive patterns if it was attacked, hunting patterns if prey tried to run away, defensive patterns if it was cornered. But there was no pattern for what was happening now. The computer was having to create new behaviors in real time. The artificial intelligence that controlled the Shadow Maw was learning and adapting, just like a real creature would. Down. In the simulation, Taiho slowly stood up. The Shadow Maw stepped back to give him room, but did not go far. Its eyes followed Taiho's movements with interest, rather than suspicion. "I think it wants to be friends," Taiho said to his classmates. "Friends?" Kale almost shouted. "That thing has killed hundreds of soldiers. You cannot be friends with a monster." But as soon as Kale raised his voice, the Shadow Maw's behavior changed. The blue-green lights on its armor flickered to yellow, which seemed to be a warning color. The creature moved between Taiho and Kale, making a low growling sound. "Do not shout," Taiho said quickly. "You are scaring it." "I am scaring it." Kale could not believe what he was hearing. Taiho reached out and gently touched the Shadow Maw's side. The creature's armor was warm and surprisingly smooth. "It is okay, buddy. He is not going to hurt anyone." The yellow lights faded back to blue-green. The creature relaxed again, but kept watching Kyle carefully. "This is amazing," Nira said quietly. "It is protecting the human. The predator sees Taiho as part of its pack." Rin nodded. "On my planet, we have creatures that bond with the first living thing they see after hatching. Maybe this thing works the same way." Thok walked closer, moving very slowly. "Human, how did you know to do this?" Taiho shrugged. "I did not really know. It just seemed scared and confused. When I see a scared animal, I try to help it feel safe." "But this is not an animal," Kyle protested. "This is a deadly alien predator." "What is the difference?" Taiho asked. "It is alive. It can think and feel. When something is scared, it acts dangerous. When it feels safe, it acts friendly. The Shadow Maw made another rumbling sound and moved closer to Tai-Ho. Then it did something that surprised everyone even more. The creature lay down on the ground like a giant dog, with its head resting near Tai-Ho's feet. In the control room, Professor Vex reached for the button that would end the simulation. This had gone far beyond what was planned. But then she stopped. Something important was happening here. Something that could change how they understood these creatures. She activated her communication system. Academy Command, this is Professor Vex. I need xenobiology specialists in the simulation control room immediately. Acknowledged, came the reply. What is the nature of the emergency? Professor Vex looked down at the impossible scene below. A human student was now sitting on the ground next to a creature that should have killed him. The other students had formed a loose circle around them, no longer afraid, but fascinated. We may have just discovered that our most dangerous enemy is not an enemy at all, she said. Down in the simulation, Tai-Ho was sharing more of his food rations with Buddy. The creature ate each piece carefully and seemed to enjoy the taste. Between bites, it would make soft sounds that almost seemed like it was trying to talk. I think it is trying to communicate, Tai-Ho told the others. Listen to the patterns in the sounds it makes. They all listened carefully. The Shadow Maw was making different sounds for different things. One sound when it wanted food. Another sound when it was happy. A third sound that seemed to be asking a question. On my planet, Rin said slowly, our ancient stories tell of the first Zephyrians making friends with flying creatures. The creatures helped them travel between mountain peaks. Maybe this is how it started. Nira was recording everything with her scanner. The Academy needs to see this data. This could change everything we know about hostile species classification. Kyle was still having trouble accepting what he was seeing. But the report said these creatures destroyed 3 military expeditions. Maybe those expeditions attacked first, Tai-Ho suggested. If soldiers came to your home and started shooting, would you not fight back to protect yourself? The Shadow Maw lifted its head and looked at Tai-Ho. Then it made a series of soft sounds that definitely seemed like it was trying to say something. The sounds were complex, with different tones and rhythms. It has language, Thok said with wonder. This creature has its own language. Professor Vex's voice came through the communication system. Students, the simulation time has been extended indefinitely. Continue your current activities. Do not do anything to agitate the creature. Tai-Ho scratched behind what might have been the Shadow Maw's ears. The creature closed several of its eyes and made a sound that was clearly pleasure. Did you hear that, buddy? Tai-Ho said. You get to stay and play with us longer. The creature made happy rumbling sounds and gently nudged Tai-Ho with its massive head. For the first time in Galactic Defense Academy history, a combat simulation had become a friendship lesson. News of what happened in combat theory class spread through Nexus Prime Station like wildfire. By the time Tai-Ho and his classmates left the simulation chamber, crowds of students and teachers had gathered in the hallways. Everyone wanted to see the human who had made friends with a Shadow Maw. Tai-Ho felt uncomfortable with all the attention. He just walked quietly toward his dormitory while other students whispered and pointed at him. Some looked at him with respect, others with confusion, and a few with fear. Is it true you touched the creature? Asked a young Kalari student. Did it really let you feed it? Said a stoneback from the advanced class. Tai-Ho did not answer their questions. He was tired and wanted to rest. But more than that, he was worried about Buddy. The simulation had been turned off when they left, which meant his new friend was gone until the next time they could activate the program. The next morning, Tai-Ho was called to the office of Admiral Chen Mi-Yung, the human officer, in charge of the human exchange program. Her office was on the upper levels of the station, with a large window that looked out at the stars. Admiral Chen was a small woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming an administrator. Her office walls were covered with pictures of battles she had fought in and awards she had won. "Sit down, Cadet Kim," she said when Tai-Ho entered. Her voice was stern but not unfriendly. Tai-Ho sat in the chair across from her desk and waited. He was not sure if he was in trouble or not. "I have read the reports about yesterday's simulation," Admiral Chen said. "Professor Vex says you did, something that has never been done before in the history of this academy." "I just gave it some food, ma'am," Tai-Ho replied quietly. Admiral Chen smiled. "You did much more than that. You changed how an entire species might be understood. Do you realize how important that is?" Tai-Ho shook his head. "I just thought it looked scared." "And that is exactly why what you did was so remarkable," Admiral Chen said. She stood up and walked to her window. "Most species in the galaxy see a dangerous creature and think only about how to fight it or run from it. Humans are different." She turned back to look at Tai-Ho. "Our species has a long history of taking dangerous animals and turning them into friends. We took wolves and made them into dogs. We took wild cats and made them into pets. We took horses that could kick us to death and taught them to carry us across continents. But this is different," Tai-Ho said. "Buddy is not from Earth. He is an alien." "Maybe that does not matter," Admiral Chen replied. "Maybe the ability to make friends crosses all species lines. Maybe that is humanity's greatest strength." That afternoon, Tai-Ho returned to the simulation chamber. Professor Vex was there along with 3 other teachers he did not recognize. One was a Vorthan scientist with many instruments. Another was a Kalari doctor who specialized in alien biology. The third was a human xenopsychologist named Dr. Park Sun-Ho. "We want to run the simulation again," Professor Vex explained. "But this time, we will record everything in much more detail. We want to understand exactly how you established communication with the creature." "Will Buddy remember me?" Tai-Ho asked. Dr. Park nodded. "The advanced AI system has been programmed to maintain continuity. The creature should remember your previous interaction." When the simulation started, Tai-Ho found himself back in the jungle. But this time, he was alone. The other students were watching from the control room. "Buddy?" Tai-Ho called softly. "Are you there?" A rustling sound came from the thick plants nearby. Then the Shadow Maw emerged, but its behavior was completely different from the first day. Instead of acting aggressive, it moved carefully and slowly. The lights on its armor were already the calm blue-green color. When Buddy saw Tai-Ho, it made excited rumbling sounds and walked quickly toward him. The creature was clearly happy to see his human friend again. "Hey there, big guy," Tai-Ho said, pulling food from his pack. "I missed you too." Buddy took the food gently and made contented sounds while eating. Then the creature did something new. It walked to a nearby tree and used its claws to carefully scratch marks in the bark. The marks looked almost like symbols. "Dr. Park," Professor Vex said into her communicator. "Are you seeing this?" "Yes," came the excited reply. "The creature is trying to show the humans something. This could be primitive writing or symbolic communication." Tai-Ho looked at the marks on the tree. They were arranged in patterns that seemed deliberate. He scratched similar marks into the ground with a stick. Buddy watched him carefully, then made more marks that were slightly different. For the next hour, Tai-Ho and Buddy took turns making marks and sounds. It was like they were teaching each other their languages. The creature was clearly intelligent and eager to communicate. But then something went wrong with the simulation system. Warning lights began flashing in the control room. The jungle environment flickered and glitched. Suddenly, instead of one Shadow Maw, there were 5 of them surrounding Tai-Ho. These new creatures were different. They moved with the aggressive patterns of the original program. Their armor lights were bright red and they made angry growling sounds. Tai-Ho found himself in the middle of 5 hostile predators, each 12 feet tall and covered in razor-sharp claws. He had no weapons and nowhere to run, but Buddy immediately understood the danger. The friendly creature stepped between Tai-Ho and the hostile ones. Its own lights changed from blue-green to bright yellow, and it made loud, roaring sounds that echoed through the jungle. The fake shadow maws attacked, but Buddy fought them with incredible skill and ferocity. Its 6 limbs moved like weapons, striking with precision and power. But there were 5 against 1, and Buddy was being hurt. Taiho could not just stand there and watch his friend get hurt. He picked up a fallen branch and tried to help, even though he knew it would do little good against such creatures. That was when Buddy did something that amazed everyone watching. The creature grabbed Taiho gently with one of its limbs and lifted him up onto its back. Then it ran through the jungle at incredible speed, carrying Taiho to safety while fighting off the other creatures. When they reached a safe distance, Buddy carefully put Taiho down and stood guard over him. The creature's armor was damaged and it was breathing heavily, but it had protected its human friend. "End simulation," Professor Vex ordered quickly. As the jungle faded away, Taiho reached out to touch Buddy one last time. But the creature was already fading as the program shut down. "Amazing," Dr. Park said as they left the simulation chamber. The creature not only formed an emotional bond with the human, but also demonstrated protective behavior and tactical thinking. This changes everything we thought we knew about these beings. That night, Taiho lay in his bed thinking about what had happened. Buddy was not just a smart animal. He was a friend who would risk his own safety to protect others. Maybe that was something all intelligent creatures could understand, no matter what planet they came from. Tomorrow, he would ask Professor Vex if he could spend more time with Buddy. There was still so much they could learn from each other. 3 weeks passed since Taiho first met Buddy. Every day after regular classes, he went to the simulation chamber to spend time with his unusual friend. The creature had learned many things during their visits. Buddy could now understand simple commands in human language and had taught Taiho several words in the Shadow Maw communication system. The friendship between human and creature had become famous throughout the academy. Students from all species came to watch their sessions. Some teachers began changing their courses to include lessons about interspecies communication instead of just combat tactics. But not everyone was happy about these changes. Commander Rax, a high-ranking Kalari officer, believed that soldiers should focus on fighting enemies, not making friends with them. He thought Taiho was making the academy soft and weak. On a routine training mission in the asteroid belt near Nexus Prime, Cadet Squadron 7 was assigned to practice patrol techniques in small fighters. The squadron included Taiho, Kael, Nira, Rin, Thok, and 5 other students from different species. They were flying through the rocky field between 2 large asteroids when their squadron leader, a Kalari named Commander Vel, received an emergency message from the academy. "All units, return to base immediately," came the urgent voice over the radio. "Emergency situation developing. Do not investigate. Return to base now." But before they could turn around, their ships detected something impossible. Long-range scanners showed a massive life form drifting between the asteroids. The readings matched exactly what they had studied in their files. It was a real shadow maw. "This is impossible," Kael said over the communication system. "Those creatures do not exist in this part of space." Commander Vel was already calling for backup and evacuation orders. According to military protocol, when encountering a hostile alien predator, the correct action was to retreat immediately and call for heavy weapons support. But as their ships got closer, Taiho could see that something was wrong with the creature. It was floating in space without any protection, which should have killed it instantly. Its movements were slow and confused. The lights on its armor were flickering weakly. "Commander," Taiho said over the radio, "I think it is hurt and lost." "Negative, Cadet Kim," Commander Vel replied firmly. "We follow standard protocol. All ships maintain safe distance and wait for backup." Through his ship's window, Taiho could see the creature more clearly. It was much larger than Buddy, probably 15 feet tall instead of 12, but its behavior was similar to what Buddy had shown in the first simulation. It was acting scared and confused, not aggressive. Then Taiho noticed something that made his heart race. There was a strange shimmering area in space near the creature. It looked like the air was bending and twisting. The Academy had taught them about dimensional rifts caused by experimental faster-than-light travel. Sometimes these rifts could pull objects from one part of the galaxy to another. "Commander, I think that creature came through a dimensional rift," Taiho reported. "It is not supposed to be here. It is lost and probably hurt." "That does not change. Our orders, Cadet," Commander Vell said. "We wait for backup." But the backup was still 20 minutes away. In that time, the creature might die from exposure to space, or the dimensional rift might close, trapping it forever far from its home. Taiho made a decision that would change his life forever. He broke formation and flew his small fighter toward the creature. "Cadet Kim, return to formation immediately," Commander Vell ordered. "That is a direct command." "Sorry, Commander," Taiho replied. "I cannot watch it die when I might be able to help." His classmates watched in shock as Taiho's fighter approached the massive alien predator. Kale was calculating the probability of survival, which was very low. Nero was trying to think of rescue plans. Rin was preparing to follow him despite orders. Thok was quietly praying to his ancestors. When Taiho got close to the creature, he could see that it was indeed badly hurt. Part of its armor was cracked, and one of its limbs hung uselessly at its side. The dimensional rift had damaged it when it was pulled through space. Taiho activated his ship's external speakers and began, making the same clicking sounds he had used with Buddy. The creature turned its many eyes toward his small fighter. The lights on its armor changed from dim red to confused yellow. "Easy there, big guy," Taiho said gently. "I am here to help you." The creature made weak sounds that seemed like distress calls. It was clearly in pain and afraid. Taiho checked his ship's systems. The emergency atmospheric shield could extend a small bubble of breathable air around his fighter. It was designed to rescue pilots whose ships had been damaged, but it might work for an alien creature too. "I am going to try something," Taiho announced to his squadron. "If it does not work, stay back and wait for the heavy ships." He activated the atmospheric shield and extended it to surround the injured Shadow Maw. The creature suddenly stopped moving as it found itself able to breathe again. The lights on its armor brightened to a healthier blue color. Taiho opened his ship's emergency supplies and found his food rations. Using the ship's mechanical arm, he offered the creature some dried meat, just like he had done with Buddy. The huge alien looked at the tiny piece of food, then at the small ship that had saved its life. Slowly and carefully, it took the food and ate it. Then it made sounds that were clearly grateful. "There you go," Taiho said. "I will call you Lucky, because you were lucky I found you." Lucky moved closer to Taiho's ship and gently touched it with one of its uninjured limbs. The gesture was unmistakably friendly. "Command, this is Cadet Kim," Taiho reported. "The creature is not hostile. It is injured and needs medical help. Request immediate xenobiology team to assist with rescue." There was a long silence on the radio. Then Commander Vell's voice came back, sounding amazed. "Cadet Kim, you have just accomplished first peaceful contact with a Class A predator species. Backup teams are en route to assist with medical care and transport." As they waited for help to arrive, Lucky stayed close to Taiho's ship. The creature seemed to understand that this small human had saved its life. When medical ships finally arrived, Lucky allowed them to treat its injuries without resistance, as long as Taiho's ship stayed nearby. Later, as Lucky was being transported to the Academy's medical facility, the creature made a series of complex sounds toward Taiho's ship. The xenolinguistics computer translated the sounds as best it could. The message was simple but profound. "Thank you, small friend." The rescue ships arrived at Nexus Prime Station with something that had never been seen before, a living Shadow Maw being treated as a patient instead of a prisoner. Lucky was taken to the medical bay while dozens of doctors and scientists gathered. to study the first peaceful contact with the species. Word of what happened spread beyond the Academy to military commanders throughout the galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, a human had made contact with a Class A predator species without violence. Admiral Chen Miyung found herself answering calls from generals and politicians who wanted to know how this was possible. 3. Days after the rescue, Taiho was called to the Academy's main conference room. Inside, he found the highest-ranking officers from 5 different species, all waiting to question him. Admiral Chen was there, along with Professor Vex, Dr. Park, and several officials he did not recognize. "Cadet Kim," said General Thorak, a massive stoneback with scars from many battles. "We need to understand exactly what you did out there. Your actions could change military doctrine for the entire galaxy." Taiho felt nervous facing so many important people, but he answered honestly. "I just treated Lucky the same way I treated Buddy. I thought about how I would feel if I was hurt and lost in a strange place. But these creatures have killed thousands of soldiers," said Commander Zix, a Kalari officer with cold yellow eyes. "How do you know they can be trusted?" Before Taiho could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the station. Emergency lights began flashing, and an announcement came over the speakers. "All personnel to emergency stations. Multiple hostile ships detected approaching the station. Unknown species. All defensive units prepare for combat." Through the conference room windows, they could see bright flashes of light in the distance as unidentified ships attacked the station's outer defenses. The ships were unlike anything in their databases, with strange curved designs and weapons that fired purple energy beams. "The main defense grid is down," reported a technician. "Hull breaches on levels 7 through 12. Casualties reported throughout the station." General Thorak immediately took command. "All available fighters launch immediately. Evacuate non-combat personnel to the inner sections." But as they prepared to leave the conference room, another announcement stopped them cold. "Attention, all personnel. The medical bay has been breached. Unknown hostile forces have entered the station through hull breach on level 9. They are moving toward the medical facilities." Taiho's heart raced. Lucky was in the medical bay, still recovering from injuries. The creature was helpless and could not defend itself. "I have to get to Lucky," Taiho said, running toward the door. "Cadet, you will report to your assigned evacuation station," General Thorak ordered. But Taiho was already gone, running through the corridors toward the medical bay. Behind him, he could hear Admiral Chen arguing with the other officers. The hallways were full of smoke and flashing emergency lights. Taiho passed injured station personnel being carried by medical teams. The sound of energy weapons echoed from somewhere nearby. When he reached the medical bay, he found chaos. The attacking aliens had broken through the outer wall and were advancing through the facility. They were tall creatures with gray skin and multiple arms, each carrying advanced weapons. They seemed to be looking for something specific. Taiho found Lucky in a large medical room, connected to machines that were helping the creature heal. The Shadow Maw was awake but too weak to move much. When Lucky saw Taiho, the creature made soft, distressed sounds. "It is okay, Lucky," Taiho said, trying to stay calm. "I am here." The attacking aliens burst into the medical room. There were 5 of them, all pointing their weapons at Taiho and Lucky. One of them, who seemed to be the leader, spoke in a harsh, mechanical voice. "Human, step away from our property. That creature belongs to us." Taiho moved to stand between the aliens and Lucky. "This creature is not property. It is a living being that was hurt and needs help." "That creature is a military asset," the alien leader replied. "We created it in our laboratories to be the perfect weapon. It escaped through a dimensional rift. During testing, we have come to retrieve it." Taiho felt sick as he understood what this meant. Lucky was not a natural predator at all. These aliens had created the Shadow Maws as biological weapons. The stories of them attacking military expeditions were probably true, but only because they had been programmed to fight. "You cannot take Lucky," Taiho said firmly. It is not a weapon anymore. It is a friend. The alien leader raised his weapon. You do not understand, human. We control these creatures completely. Watch. The alien spoke a series of commands in a strange language. Lucky's eyes suddenly changed, becoming unfocused and distant. The creature tried to stand up despite its injuries, moving like it was being controlled by someone else. But then Lucky looked at Taiho and seemed to fight against the programming. The creature made sounds of distress and confusion, caught between artificial commands and natural feelings. Fight it, Lucky, Taiho said. You are not their weapon. You are your own person. The alien leader looked surprised. Impossible. The neural programming cannot be overcome. But Lucky was proving him wrong. The creature focused on Taiho and made a decision. Instead of obeying the programmed commands, Lucky placed itself protectively in front of the human who had shown it kindness. You have corrupted our weapon, the alien leader said angrily. No matter. We will take it back and fix the programming. That was when the cavalry arrived. The conference room door exploded inward as Buddy crashed through it, followed by Professor Vex and a team of security officers. The simulation Shadow Maw had somehow been given a physical form using experimental holographic technology, but Buddy was not alone. Behind the security team came Kale, Nira, Rin, and Thok, all armed and ready to fight for their friend. The battle in the medical bay was brief but intense. The attacking aliens had not expected to face two Shadow Maws fighting to protect humans. Buddy and Lucky worked together like they had known each other their whole lives, while Taiho's classmates provided covering fire. When it was over, the alien weapons were captured and their leader was taken prisoner. The rest of their ships retreated when they realized their mission had failed. Later, in the aftermath of the battle, Taiho sat with both Lucky and Buddy in a specially prepared room. The two creatures had bonded quickly, communicating in their complex language and clearly enjoying each other's company. Admiral Chen entered the room with good news. The Galactic Council has voted to grant both creatures full citizenship rights. They are no longer classified as weapons or property. They are free beings with the right to choose their own futures. Lucky and Buddy both chose to stay at the Academy. Lucky became the first Shadow Maw to join the Galactic Defense Forces, working as a specialist in rescue operations. Buddy continued to help in the new Interspecies Relations Program. Taiho was promoted to instructor and put in charge of developing new first contact protocols. His methods were taught to cadets throughout the galaxy, emphasizing understanding over violence and communication over combat. Years later, when new students arrived at the Academy, they would often ask about the human who made friends with monsters. Taiho would smile and introduce them to Lucky and Buddy, who had become beloved members of the Academy family. The final lesson was always the same. Sometimes the greatest strength is not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to understand and the courage to trust first. In a galaxy full of different species, friendship was the most powerful weapon of all.